What is good, internet? It is Spirit of Paradox here, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing the Ultimates issue number 4, Thunder, and we get introduced to Ultimate Thor. Before we start though, I just want to say, if you guys are fans of the Ultimate Universe, this is the channel you want to be on. I'm going to be uploading content surrounding the Ultimate Universe on here, and I'm going to be doing this as a lead up to the upcoming event Ultimate Invasion, which drops this June. We will see the return of the Ultimate Universe and possibly a revival? Question mark. But with all further ado, let's start issue number 4, Thunder. We begin on a space station orbiting Earth, and we see Tony Stark with astronauts being televised on the Larry King show. Tony says, "Sorry Larry, could you repeat the question? Sharon Elizabeth just made me laugh, and I think I got some of this Berlinga 69 went up my nose." Larry King says, "Sure, I was wondering if being CEO of Stark International might interfere with your Iron Man duties in the Ultimates. But I think you already answered my question, Tony. I mean, here you are, a month after the team's official launch, and you've been missing for 2 weeks on the blasted space shuttle, for God's sake." Tony says, "Well, first of all, this shuttle thing for Shannon's birthday was booked ages ago, and despite what they say in the papers, I don't like disappointing beautiful actresses. Secondly, I've worked an 18-hour day since I was 10 years old, and as you're perfectly aware, I get very, very bored when I'm not doing 15 things at once." Larry responds, "But don't you think you're needed on the ground right now, Tony? All of this cash being diverted into superhuman forces is creating a lot of friction with the military brass. Can you seriously justify a $50 billion headquarters off the coast of Manhattan when there's only been one notable supervillain attack in American history? What is another 10 years before someone like Magneto comes along, supposing it never happens again?" Then we find out this whole live show was being broadcasted across the entire nation of America, and Tony Stark responds with the greatest respect, "That's the craziest argument I have ever heard, Larry. Isn't that like refusing to take out medical insurance because you can't ever imagine yourself getting sick?" And then Larry would respond, "Okay, what about this accusation of the idea of supervillain threat was only stirred up by your media interest, and now you're just creaming off all of the big government contracts? Then of course, there's the problems you've had finding super people for this amazing world beating team. Isn't it true that, despite having Captain America on board, none of your 20,000 technicians have able to duplicate the old super soldier serum running through his veins?" Tony Stark claps back and says, "Well, in response to your first point, getting people to sign up for the most dangerous job in the world is always going to be a challenge, Larry. That said, we are talking to the Norse god Thor, and Hank Pym is already working on a unique artificial intelligence with a variety of extra normal abilities. As for the super soldier situation, of course we're disappointed Bruce Banner hasn't delivered the goods, but Captain America is the most dangerous man alive. Are you seriously telling me we're going to need 2 of this guy to win a fight?" Bruce Banner overhears this, and he ain't happy at all. In the next page we go to New York City, and we see Steve Rogers with Janet Pym, and he's buying clothes with her, and he says this, "Thank you for helping me pick out new clothes, Jan. You really seem to know your way around these new boutiques. Well, my mum used to be a designer, so I guess shopping's in my blood cap. Besides, I was getting tired seeing you showing up in meetings in a pork pie hat and bell buttons." Steve makes a dig at Hank Pym and says, "I just hope that husband of yours doesn't mind you spending an entire afternoon with a strange man." And she says, "Oh please, 2 cappuccinos and a look around some shops is hardly grounds for a divorce these days. You're not in 1845 anymore, Buster." Steve's like, tell me about it. $250 for a pair of slacks? I didn't make that much in 6 months when I joined the army. And Janet's like, you really crack me up, Mr. Captain America. Jan continues and says, I mean, here you are, all cheekbones and six packs like some Calvin Klein model, but the second you open your mouth, you sound as ancient as my dear old dad. Steve's like, to tell you the truth, I've probably got 10 years on your father, Jan. Now there's a creepy thought. So, how did things go with your old fiancée? Did she find it easier to talk over the phone than she did in the flesh? And Steve says, actually, the heart-to-heart the other night was with Bucky, but he said Gail might join us for a bite to eat when we get together for a beer later in the week. Steve opens up and says, waking up from a 50-year sleep and finding your best friend's married to your fiancé wasn't exactly easy for me, but it must have been twice as hard for Bucky and Gail. Cap straight up asks, what do you say to someone you love when you've had 5 entire decades to get used to the idea of them being dead? Jan responds and says, well, I think Fury's right, and the best thing to do is to take things nice and slow, Cap. I'm sure it helps living near a few of your old army buddies too. Steve and Jan both walk into an old broken down apartment building and it's covered in graffiti, and she says, but surely you could rent somewhere a little bit more upmarket with all that lovely money they're paying us for the Ultimates thing? And then Steve says, $600 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment is more than enough, thank you very much, Mrs. Pym. Well, I just hope you invested some of that cash you don't like spending on some big unbreakable locks, Jan says. And then Steve responds, besides, I've lived in this neighborhood my entire life. I'm not going to pick up the stakes and move just because some drugged out little wise guys are hanging around the front door. And when they get to the apartment room, it's really sad because the front door of it is busted. And then when they walk in, Steve just looks sad, man. Like really sad. Like everything he's ever known and loved is either died or it's become so old to the point where he can't relate to it anymore. And it's really peak because like we never really got this in the 616 with Captain America, but in the Ultimate Universe they really do demonstrate that Captain America truly is a man out of time. And then in the next page we go to the Triskelion and we see Betty Ross giving Bruce Banner a bollocking, and she says, Steve Rogers' quarters were breached? Who do they think they were behind it, Bruce? The Arabs? The Chinese? Actually, he reckons it was a bunch of kids who lived across the street. He's heading over there to kick their butts right now, Betty. Bruce continues and says, poor Cap. He spent all of last week trawling flea markets to piece together his old record collection, just for some idiot to just pour paint all over it. And then Betty, being a bitch in this universe, says, gee, that's really tragic, Dr. Banner, but right now I'm a little more concerned about the televised training exercise nobody's bothered to show up for. She continues and says, I mean, Stark's in space, Fury's called into a meeting with Shenny, and now Captain America and the Wasp are trying to avenge some stupid Frank Sinatra albums. This really shows in this universe everybody is a dickhead. And then Betty continues to say, as far as the media are going to be concerned, we're promoting a super team consisting entirely of Giant Man. And then we could see in the background loads of people are taking pictures, and one of them says, okay, how about we try a shot of you holding one of those big jets over your head, Dr. Pym? And he says, to be honest, they actually look kind of heavy, guys. What if I do something to my back? For a lot of you guys who don't know, this is actually the start of how Bruce starts to lose his mind and just starts to break down. And this woman is so cruel to him. Like, check this out. This is what she says. My god, Bruce, wasn't it bad enough that Hank and Janet Pym had you demoted without letting everybody down with the super soldiers too? You should be losing your mind about not failing to crack the super soldier serum. And he says, what are you talking about, Betty? This is me losing my mind. Betty completely ignores what Bruce just said and interjects and says, and what the heck happened to that former Olympic archer Fury signed up last week? I thought Hawkeye was scheduled to make an appearance today. Bruce responds with, he's on vacation in the Maldives. He said this was the only week his girlfriend could get off work, and since this wasn't technically an emergency. Betty interrupts him and says, oh, for God's sake, the hacks are going to eat us alive for this. You moron, I thought you were clever. Was the only thing you could actually do. And then Bruce says, I'm sorry. She says, well, sorry doesn't stop me from looking like an idiot, does it? Just make sure Fury gets Thor on the team tonight, or this temporary break we're on becomes something more permanent. Like, yo, what a bitch! And in the next page we go to Norway, and this is when we get introduced to Ultimate Thor. And we see all of these people rallying together, and then we see a shield helicopter getting prepared to land, and loads of people are wondering who it is. And then we see Nick Fury and Bruce Banner come out of the helicopter. Fury comes out the chopper and says, somebody hasn't been answering my calls. And Thor would respond with, then perhaps that certain someone is not remotely interested in anything you have to say, Nicholas Fury. I hope you are not here to arrest us for our recent involvement in the World Trade protest, General. As always, your lackeys are in the media, completely misreported what was merely a peaceful demonstration. And Fury claps back with, Thor, if I was here to arrest you, I think I'd be packing a little more than a regulation shield automatic and a trusty Swiss Army knife, Norse boy. And then Thor responds, this must be about the tempting job offer to cut my hair and sign up for your United States Marines, eh? And then Bruce decides to get involved, and he claps back at Thor and says, the Ultimate isn't an army, mister. They're a team of superheroes we assembled to take care of post-human problems the armed forces can't handle anymore. And Thor's like, oh, it matters not whether you are wearing capes or combat boots, little man. You are all just thugs in uniform who will smash any threat to corrupt the status quo. Thor continues and says, go back to your paymasters and tell them that the son of Odin is not interested in working for a military-industrial complex who engineers wars and kills innocents. Your talk might be about supervillains now, but it's only a matter of time before they sent you to kill for oil or free trade. And Bruce is just like, oh, for goodness sake. How can these people just sit there and listen to this son of Odin garbage? Fury is telling Bruce, take it easy, Banner, but he ain't having any of this. He's like, no, these people have a right to know the guy that they're following around is a delusional crackpot, General. He continues and says, you're not the new Messiah. You're just a crazy old ex-nurse who had a few nervous breakdowns 3 weeks short of his 13th birthday and spent his 18-month in a lunatic asylum. You might make a fortune from your lecture tours and your trashy self-help books, but you don't fool me for a second, mister. I have your secrets right here. And Thor is like, aw, and I have your secrets right here, Dr. Banner. Have you told Betty Ross that you cry yourself to sleep every night? Or are you too busy fantasizing about hurting the Pyms for stealing your old job? So you're probably wondering why Bruce is taking so much disrespect from people and not turning into the Hulk, even though he's turned into the Hulk in Ultimate Origins. So if you guys did not know, the Hulk has officially been cured at this point in the timeline of the Ultimate Universe, so it's basically the weak version of Ultimate Hulk, the green version. In the Ultimate Universe, the green is normally the weaker and the grey is normally the stronger, so it's opposite compared to 616. But the Hulk has been cured, but he will come back in the next issue, and they do explain how. So if you're wondering why, like, yo Bruce, you're taking too much disrespect, turn into the Hulk and smack somebody up, he ain't got that power as of right now. After savagely burning Bruce, Thor says, "These powers are neither mutant nor machine, human. If a demonstration from Mjolnir is what you require, then I shall happily oblige." And then in the next page we see Thor bring down some thunder and rain. After the demonstration we see Thor's followers being happy and celebrating, and Bruce looks pissed as always. Fury smiles and looks impressed and says, "What about the interview you gave on 60 Minutes, Thor? I thought you were here to save the world." Thor says, "Oh, I am here to save the world, General Fury. To save it from people like you." And then we see Bruce and Fury walk to the chopper and get ready to leave. And Fury says, "Come on, Banner, let's go." And Banner says, "We're obviously wasting our time here." And they leave. In the next page we go weeks ahead, and we are in the recreation room, and we see members of the Ultimates talking to one another. And this is where the Ultimate Universe gets its meta moments from. I'd probably say this is probably the most on the nose moment in the Ultimate Universe. So the Ultimates basically are out of work at the moment. They don't have the super soldier serum, they don't have Thor, and they don't have a super villain to fight. But Nick Fury says that the Ultimates have been optioned to be in a movie by Betty Ross, and they're trying to get a free picture deal with Brad Pitt to play as Captain America. And then Steve is just sitting there like, who's Brad Pitt? And then Soy Boy Hank Pym interjects and thinks that this whole movie is going to be a disaster. And he asks Nick Fury who he wants to play as him. And Fury responds with, "Mr. Samuel Jackson, of course. That's not even an open debate, Dr. Pym." So yeah, if we all know the joke by now, that Ultimate Nick Fury is based off Samuel Jackson. And you know the little fun fact about this? Samuel Jackson was actually going to sue Marvel for this, and then eventually they came to him and asked him like, "Yo, would you like to play as Nick Fury in the movies?" And then he was like, "Cool," and then he never sued them in the end. But a little fun fact about that, originally Samuel Jackson was not happy about this. The team gives their recommendations, like Tony Stark should be played by Johnny Depp. I think that would have been a really cool choice. Like Matthew McConaughey playing as Giant Man. Nah. I don't think Matthew McConaughey would like that role. And then Lucy Liu to play as Janet Pym, and she wasn't very happy about that, because she tried to say, "What, you think because all of us Asians look the same?" and so on and so forth. And then she says like, "What, you got Bruce Lee as your backup?" And then Steve Rogers is just sitting in the corner and has no idea who Bruce Lee is at all. And then Hank decides to be a jerk even more and tries to give his recommendation for Bruce Banner. He says someone who's bug-eyed. Janet says maybe Woody Allen or the creepy kid from The Sixth Sense. And then Nick Fury even interjects and says, "Nah, Gina Davis or the guy in the golf pants from Stuart Little." And then that's when Bruce Banner hears everyone making fun out of him, and they all have that awkward moment. Yeah, he definitely cried his way out of there. But Hank finally found out his answer, and he says Steve Buscemi. In the next page we go to Manhattan, and we see Bruce Banner on the phone to Betty in a phone booth. And he says, "Betty, glad your phone wasn't switched off or anything. There's something I've got to tell you, and it's really important." And she says, "Bruce, is that you? Listen, I really can't talk right now. I'm in the middle of dinner with Freddie Prinze Jr. Betty starts blabbering on about the movie deal with the Ultimates, and then Bruce says, "Betsy, will you shut up? We don't have much time here. I've done something stupid again, and I think you're in serious danger, sweetheart." And with that one sentence, instantly knew bad news, and her concentration's at 100%, and she tells them over the phone, Bruce, I want you to calm down and tell me exactly what you've done wrong, okay? And then he responds to her and says, I just felt bad that I wasn't able to crack the formula, so I mixed Cap's blood with the Hulk serum and injected it into myself, Betty. And she's like, what? Why would you do that? And then Bruce tells her over the phone, well, the way I rationalized it, it was turning myself into the monster and giving everyone something to fight was the only way I could stop my live stream from going up in smoke. And the last thing he says to her, but the God honest truth of the matter is, I just missed being big. And then she says, Bruce, and then the phone drops. And then the transformation has begun, people. An ambulance finds Bruce and they say that he's in cardiac arrest, and we see two doctors are trying to resuscitate him with those charging machines. Sorry, I don't know what they're really called. And these paramedics are really trying to keep Bruce alive, and they're using that chargy thing on his chest a good couple of times. They finally come to the conclusion that Bruce is beyond saving, like he is on the way out. And then they move their attention to how slow the car is moving. While this is all happening, Bruce just opens his eyes and he shouts out for Betty in his Hulk voice. And everyone's like, what? But bro, you literally just died and they're trying to restrain him. And then one of the nurses is like, yo, this guy is stronger than he looks. Like, yeah fam, look at his shoe. That my man's toe is bust out of his shoe. Like that ain't no good thing, big man. If I ever see something like that, it's either my man's a werewolf or he's a Hulk. As Bruce is transforming into the Hulk, the driver is like losing control and he's shouting out like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing back there? And then we see the Hulk shout, get out of my way, you moron. And then the ambulance just tips over. And then we see the Hulk bust out of it and we see his silhouette. And then he shouts, Hulk want Freddie Prinze Jr. News of the Hulk's rampage makes it to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Triskelion and the Ultimates, and everybody is getting ready to take the Hulk on. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody. S.H.I.E.L.D., all of its soldiers, helicopters and so on, and the Ultimates. Wasp and Giant Man tried to shift blame to one another when they were both involved in this whole situation and did cause this. Tony Stark says, look, I don't care who said what. All I know is one of our guys has gone AWOL and we better get out there and put some kind of plan together. And then Captain America says the plan is simple, Tony. We just hit him until he drops. And that's the end of issue number 4 of The Ultimates. That was issue number 4 of The Ultimates. And I have got to say, man, in this issue we really get to understand a lot of people's motivations and wants in this issue, I should say. And it's really apparent that some people are just dickheads. And they were real dickheads towards Bruce. And now they're going to pay the repercussions for that in issue number 5. Which is actually my personal favourite issue, because the Hulk kicks everybody's ass. But he does end up losing that battle. But anyway folks, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys are fans of the Ultimate Universe, make sure you drop a like and make sure you subscribe. We've got plenty more Ultimate content on the way, and we're going to be doing this as a lead up as the upcoming event Ultimate Invasion, where we get to see characters like the Maker and Miles and potentially the Ultimate Universe this June. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.